Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. This time, we're tackling a topic that might not sound super exciting at first, French grammar. But stick with us. We're focusing on something really key expressions of frequency. You know those little words like souvent, toujours, and jamais. They might not seem like much, but trust me, they're game changers when it comes to speaking French fluently. Especially if you're like our listeners, prepping for the pronunciator certificate on this very topic.
You're absolutely right about that. These expressions are more than just grammar. They're the building blocks of everyday conversation. In any language, knowing how often someone does something gives you a real glimpse into their life and their habits.
So let's jump right in. We've got souvent for often, toujours for always, and jamais for never. Seems simple enough on the surface.
Well, they are the basics, but there's always more to discover, right? Toujours, for example, it can also mean still when you're talking about something continuing over time.
Oh, that's interesting. So I could say, je suis toujours en train d'apprendre français to mean I'm still learning French.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got it.
Now, where do these words fit into a sentence? I know French can be a bit stricter about word order than English.
Think of it as a dance. Each word has its place. Frequency expressions usually come right before the verb they're modifying.
So if I want to say, I never watch television, it wouldn't be je regarde jamais la télévision.
Close, but remember the word order. Je ne regarde jamais la télévision.
Ah, I see. The negative ne goes before the verb too. It's all about that structure.
Exactly. You're getting it.
So we've got always, never, and often. What about those in-between times? Sometimes, rarely. Does French have words for those too?
Of course, French has a whole spectrum of frequency expressions. You've got parfois for sometimes and rarement for rarely.
Okay, so how would I say, I rarely travel by train?
That would be je voyage rarement en train.
Rarement, right before the verb break, Lara. Got it. This is making a lot more sense now.
It's all about practice and getting comfortable with the pattern.
Well, I'm feeling more confident already, and I bet our listeners are too. But before we move on to questions, let's take a quick break.
So we've talked about individual expressions, but the fun part is combining them. You know, like painting a picture with your words.
I like that. So how would that work in a real sentence?
Well, let's say you wanted to describe your week. You could say, je travaille souvent pendant la semaine, mais je me détends toujours le week-end.
I often work during the week, but I always relax on the weekend.
Exactly. You're contrasting souvent and toujours to create a more detailed description.
Right. It's not just about how often, it's about the bigger picture.
And you can get even more nuanced. You know, sometimes you do things, but not that often.
Like what kind of expressions?
Well, there's presque jamais. That means hardly ever or almost never.
So if I said, je mange des escargots presque jamais, it means I'm not a big snail eater.
Exactly. You've got it. It's a great way to express something you rarely do.
Now, what about asking questions? Can we use these expressions to ask about frequency?
Absolutely. Questions are key to any conversation.
So how would I ask, do you often eat at the restaurant?
Simple. You just invert the subject and verb. Tu manges souvent au restaurant.
Okay. And what about toujours? Can I ask, do you still play sports?
Perfect example. Tu fais toujours du sport. It implies an ongoing action.
That makes sense. So toujours works for both present and ongoing action.
Exactly. It's a versatile word.
Now, what about jamais? How do I ask if someone has never done something?
Remember, French negation uses ne and pas, but with jamais, you drop the pas.
So it'd be like, n'as-tu jamais visité Paris? Have you never visited Paris?
Exactly. You've got it. Jamais is strong enough on its own.
This is all starting to click now. It's like a puzzle coming together.
And the more you practice, the more natural it will become.
Oh, I'm feeling much more confident about using these expressions.
That's great to hear. Now let's talk about how these expressions work with negation.
Negation.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Remember how jamais already has a negative meaning?
Right.
Well, the same logic applies to other frequency expressions when used with negation.
So like, je ne vais pas souvent au cinéma. I don't often go to the cinema.
Exactly. You got it. You don't need the pas because souvent implies a negative sense already.
So it's about simplifying the sentence.
Right. It's all about that French elegance.
This is really helpful. I'm starting to see the nuances of these expressions.
It's all about practice and paying attention to the details.
Well, I'm definitely feeling more prepared to tackle those pronunciator exercises now.
I'm sure you'll do great. Remember, it's about understanding the logic, not just memorizing rules.
Now, I'm curious, have you ever had any funny or awkward moments using these expressions?
Oh, absolutely. There's always something to learn when you're using a new language.
Like what? Tell us a story.
I once told a friend I toujours ate breakfast at 8 a.m., meaning always. but she gave me this look like I was some kind of robot. It was pretty funny.
I can imagine. That's a good reminder that even simple words can have different meanings depending on the context.
Exactly. And that's what makes language learning so interesting.
Well, I think our listeners are well on their way to mastering French frequency expressions. We've covered the basics like souvent, toujours, and jamais, and even delved into those trickier ones like parfois, rarement, and presque jamais.
Plus, they've learned how to use them in questions, negations, and even with the past tense.
So they're ready to ace that pronunciator certificate.
Absolutely. And remember, the key is practice. Use these expressions as much as you can. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn.
Exactly. Language learning is all about having fun and experimenting.
So keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep enjoying the journey.
And with that, we'll wrap up this deep dive on French frequency expressions. Until next time, au revoir, wava.